Let's move to the next module, part of this module, which is on everyday expressions. Well, if you look at how most Indian homes are run, you'll see a pattern. Care doesn't wait for special occasions. It lives in kitchen, in daily routines, inside conversations. It travels through food, through games, through shared rooms and familiar voices. So let's start where a lot of things begin. Let's start with kitchen. Ask someone what they do when they have a cold. You'll hear names like ajwain, adrak, tulsi, kali mirch. You will hear, my nani used to make this, or my mother kept that in her masala dabba. You rarely see labels, but a grandmother's hand knows exactly where to reach. That's Gyan Parampara, knowledge that isn't written down but shown. Indian kitchens carry their own kind of medicine, not from a shop, but from memory. The old haldi doodh before bed wasn't just comfort, it was care. Kadha for coughs, ajwain for stomach aches, mustard oil for winters. This is how healing becomes a family habit. And from the masala dabba to nani ke nuske, food isn't just for taste, it's used to help, heal, and comfort. And it's a family space, it's a family action. Festive foods, for instance. In Kerala, there is payasam on Onam. In Bengal, narkel naru during Durga Puja. In Punjab, pinni is made with love and ghee in winters. Sometimes this bonding is just over a cup. For instance, in Kashmir, families gather over kava, a warm brew with saffron almonds. In Tamil homes, filter coffee is shared with steel tumblers, and the first pour is often handed often to the eldest. And we see this all around in food. We see the families in home architecture. It's the way we build our homes. We make it easier to stay close. What if walls and roofs and courtyards were never just about shelter, but about coming back to each other over and over again? Would be nice, right? That we see around. In Kerala, homes were built in Nalukettu style. 4 blocks on 4 sides, and in the center, a courtyard. The Nadu Padnam, open to the sky. You couldn't really avoid it. You'd had to walk through it, on your way to the kitchen, to a prayer, to your room. And in doing that, you'd run into someone. Maybe they were sitting with tea, maybe chopping vegetables, maybe just watching the rain. It was casual, but that's how connections last through ordinary, repeated, unplanned, routine moments. Those courtyards made sure the family had those moments every day. In Pune, the Vadas did something very similar, but in its own way. Big homes, sometimes 3 floors high, wrapped around a central space. Balconies open into the courtyard. So did the bedrooms, storerooms, kitchens, puja rooms. The courtyard saw everything. Kids learning to walk, clothes drying on the lines, arguments, wedding preparations, festival lights, all of them strung up at night. If someone came home after a long day, they'd pass through it. If someone felt left out, they could step into it. It makes you wonder, was it the architecture that helped families stay involved in each other's lives? In Nagaland, homes they're made of bamboo wood, raised on stilts, but often built together by neighbors. The hearth is where the family gathers. Step outside, and you'll see that life often spills into shared spaces, resting platforms, outdoor fires, nearby granaries. It's kind of that togetherness that isn't loud, but it's there, always. And nearby, there's a morung, right? A shared house where young boys lived and learned. It wasn't a school exactly, wasn't a home either, but it was a place where you grew up surrounded by others. You listened to the elders, you learned your role, and somehow you became part of something bigger than yourself. In Gond villages, especially in Chhattisgarh, there's something called a Ghotul. It's a youth house too. But this one included both boys and girls. It was where they planned village events, kind of learned to manage things, help each other. It's an open collective. And through it, they understood how to live together. Not by being told, but by doing. Rajasthan's Havelis, with their high walls and shaded courtyards, they might look grand, but inside, the story was familiar. Family members gathering in courtyard during the hot afternoons, and there was always someone around. And that mattered. That mattered. In the colder parts of Himachal, for instance, homes were built in Kath Kuni style, wood and stone, stacked in a way that made them stronger for winter. Cattle lived below, families stayed above, and when snow blocked the roads, the cold set in, people didn't feel cut off. They cooked, ate, sang, told stories, all in the same central space. Togetherness, therefore, wasn't a choice, it was built into the house. Even in the bamboo homes of Northeast, they're built closed, raised on stills, you'll see how it is easy for children to wander between kitchens or for elders to talk across verandas. It was for life to move freely between homes. The closeness isn't only emotional, it's also architectural. And so architecture evolves based on what societies want around this. And across India, the homes were built with this quiet intelligence. They created chances for people to cross paths, to talk, to sit next to each other, not to feel alone. And you begin to ask yourself, was it the people who kept coming back to each other, or was it the way the homes were built that made them coming back? Sort of what natural? Maybe both. Maybe the home wasn't just a structure you lived in. Maybe it was something that helped you live with each other. So even the architectural imagination evolved because the social aspirations were of certain kinds. The shared spaces and games. I mean, maybe we move out of kitchen and talk about the shared spaces in Indian homes. In joint families, you'll see people everywhere, on beds and corridors, near the swing. Privacy is rare, but company is plenty. An uncle reads the paper while the child is tying his shoelaces. A cousin is teaching you how to ride a cycle. A grandmother folding clothes while telling you how she met your grandfather. Now, this is how Gyan Parampara works, through side-by-side living. And in these shared spaces, games play a huge role. Not the ones on screen, but the ones that need no batteries, no downloads, one that needs just people. Across India, indoor games aren't just a way to kill time. They are how families connect, how skills get passed on. You've probably seen or played Ludo, but it started as Pachisi, played on cloth boards with the cowrie shells, way before plastic tokens existed. You've played chess. Its roots lie in games that is often known as Chaturanga, a game from ancient India, where each piece represented a part of the army. Even snakes and ladders, that simple, game of ups and downs, it was once called Moksha Patam. I mean, that's the game that is ancient times. It wasn't just about luck. In fact, it used to teach kids about good deeds and bad ones, actions and consequences. In the south, you'll find Palankuri, played with tamarind seeds or shells on a wooden board with pits. It's fast, it's smart, and it quietly teaches you math and memory. And many such games exist all around us across this country. Carom, it's a full family event. Uncles are flicking these goatees, aunties are coming out, queen cover, cousin arguing about fouls. By the end, no one remembers who won, but everyone remembers the game. Even cards, without stakes or gambling, are sort of go-to for many families. You'll see grandparents, parents, kids together. They're playing everything together, learning patience, watching each other, different stories, tales, and laughing at blunders. In Northeast, in Nagaland, you see it's even in Northeast for that matter, bonding through play, learning by doing. For instance, take go-karting, not the racing track kind. This is kids building wooden carts at home, 3 wheels, a plank, some rope, and a child pushes, the other steers. This is not about speed, it's about coordination, it's about trust. There's this spinning, top spinning, not just spin and watch. These kids learn to aim blind, land perfect hits, control motion precision. Most Indian games are games that you play with people. Among the Konya community, there's stilt walking. Tall bamboo stilts, long strides. It looks playful, but it builds serious balance and focus. The Ringma men, they have a game called target kicking. You jump high and try to knock an object off the top of a spear. Back then it was a way to maybe spot future warriors. Today it's still about strength and control, but also about friendly rivalry. The Sumi tribe, for instance, has Kitido. It's leg wrestling. But, the rules like no punching, only feet. It was their way of maybe settling disputes using strength, but not necessarily violence. And girls had their own games. Akalo, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the sword bean game, played after the harvest. It takes rhythm, timing, and teamwork. Wrestling wasn't just for men either. In tribes like the Angami or the Chakkasang, women wrestled too. This was about skill, not brute force. You would win by lifting and tripping your opponent. And the matches, although matches always ended with a hand to help them up. None of these games came from a textbook. They weren't taught in a school. They weren't picked up under a tree, in a courtyard during festivals. You watched, you tried, you got better. And that's how traditions continued. In some ways, therefore, the commonality is not the same games are played around, but there's always family games that you find everywhere, different kinds. Even today, tribal festivals, local sports means there are ways to keep these games alive, but for people to meet, they're not about play alone, they're about memory, movement, meaning, passed from one generation to the other. Let's come to stories. Every night across thousands of homes in India, lakhs of them, a familiar phrase is like once upon a time, right? That's how that phrase starts, you know. And storytelling isn't for sleep, it's for sense making. A monkey and a crocodile, a lion and a rabbit, clever jackal. These aren't just characters from Panchatantra or Jatak tales. They're early teachers. They taught children how to think, how to act, how to live, and not by preaching, but through exemplars of animals, adventure, families coming together, telling these tales again and again. In Bengal, there is Thakumar Juli. It's a collection of folk tales with queens, demons, magical parrots, trickster kids. These stories aren't read aloud. They're passed down usually from grandmother's lap. So, lullabies in a way do the same work. In Tamil Nadu, Thalatu is soft and rhythmic. In Assam, the Omur Apunar Desh, this melody is tuned into bedtime songs that wrap identity and affection. In Rajasthan, these loris often mention camels, sand, moon, anchoring the child in the landscape. Even Bollywood has played a role with songs like Nanni Kali Sone Chali, for instance, right? Many of you may have heard of it. Toddlers across the country have grown up in these songs, and they're all family lullabies and songs. So what does everyday life in Indian families look like? It looks like shared food, home remedies, folded clothes, whispered names, complicated games that you play together, rice flour on the threshold, a thread of a song, a passing proverb. And in all of it, there's one thing that never changes. Someone older is showing someone younger the way forward. And this is not with instructions, but with example. And this is how a culture continues. That's how family stays together. This is how Gyan Parampara is built over time.